All right, welcome back to another explainer. Today, we are unpacking a truly fascinating text. It's a highly emotional, deeply allegorical piece that's focused entirely on spiritual encouragement and resilience. And honestly, whether you're approaching this from a specific faith background or you're just interested in the psychology behind deeply motivating metaphors, the imagery used in this text is undeniably powerful. We're going to break down exactly how the speaker uses the concept of a trial to completely reframe human suffering, exhaustion, and ultimate victory. Okay, let's dive into this. The entire foundation of our source material today rests on this one central, really gripping metaphor. You, the listener, are being asked to imagine yourself standing trial in a heavenly courtroom. The text opens with this incredibly dramatic premise, stating, "A verdict has been issued in the high courtroom of heaven over the battle you are most tired of fighting." Notice how the speaker doesn't start by analyzing your everyday problems. Instead, they immediately transport you to this cosmic legal setting where the struggles of your daily life are being litigated on a completely spiritual level. So let's look at Section 1, the heavenly courtroom, setting the stage for the trial. Now, you might feel like you've been standing alone in this courtroom for, well, a really long time. You've been carrying this incredibly heavy weight of being accused, day and night. And the text really captures that raw human feeling of isolation, right? When you're fighting a battle that literally no one else can see, and you feel entirely weighed down by your own perceived shortcomings, waiting in this profound silence for help to arrive. But then, the text introduces a major plot twist to this legal drama. The source makes a sweeping assertion. The silence you mistook for abandonment, it was actually the silence of a court that had already decided. According to the speaker, the battle was settled in heavenly places long before your earthly struggle even began. You aren't fighting toward a verdict, they insist you are already living underneath one.
Which brings us to Section 2, silencing the accuser, the empty case against you.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this source material explores the opposing counsel in this metaphor, the accuser. Obviously, if there's a trial, there has to be a prosecution, right? And the text creates a vivid contrast between the two main figures in this room. First, you have the accuser. This figure is loud, throwing threats and constantly claiming you're guilty, unloved, not enough, or even too much. But the text argues this is an entirely empty case. The accuser is only loud because they've actually lost all real authority. Then, on the flip side, we have the judge. The divine judge is quiet but holds absolute authority and has already taken the bench to declare you justified, defended, and loved. The text makes a great point here. We humans often make the mistake of confusing the volume of the enemy's noise with actual authority, when in reality, the judge has already thrown the accuser out of court. Okay, to make this concept super concrete, the source text actually pauses its narrative to guide the listener through a literal breathing exercise. It's actually really striking. The speaker instructs you to breathe in and then let the old air go all the way out, making that exhale longer than the inhale. Why do this? Because it physically mimics the emptying of a courtroom after a verdict has been read. It represents the physical release of finally giving up a defense for a case that you won before you ever walked in. When you let your shoulders drop, you're physically acting out the reality of no longer having to brace yourself against all those empty accusations. Moving right along to Section 3, Purpose in the Pain, Reframing the Evidence. So the crucial point is how this reframes our entire perspective on suffering and perceived failures. The text offers this highly specific, kind of mind-blowing definition of exhaustion. It draws a line between the normal exhaustion of someone who is losing a fight and the unique exhaustion of someone who is unknowingly fighting a battle that is already over. The speaker actually views your sheer endurance, the fact that you simply kept standing your ground season after season, as definitive proof. It's your own internal evidence that you have never truly accepted the enemy's false verdict of defeat. You are tired because you just keep stepping back into the ring, even though the judge already rang the final bell. And the text actually takes this reframing a step further, touching on a very private struggle, those silent tears shed in moments of complete despair. Instead of viewing these tears as evidence of weakness or a sign that the enemy is somehow winning, the text claims the judge views them as holy evidence of your survival. The speaker insists that these unseen struggles are being kept as a precious treasure by the divine judge, eventually to be transformed into something of immense worth. It literally strips away all the shame usually associated with struggling. That leads us to Section 4, the promised inheritance, beyond the verdict. So, having established that the trial is over and you've been vindicated, we get to look at the aftermath, specifically the rewards detailed in the text for those who stand standing. The text lists out the elements of what it calls a holy blessing, things like wisdom, a clear mind, courage, open doors, and protection by an army of angels. But, and this is absolutely crucial to the metaphor, the speaker makes sure to emphasize a major distinction here. This inheritance, it is not a paycheck. You didn't earn it by human performance or willpower or by fighting harder in the courtroom. It is granted purely by the judge's choice. It's a heritage handed to you simply because the verdict went your way. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer magnitude of the promises being made here. Quote, "A blessing is moving toward you that is large enough to crush the sorrow you have carried. Not patch it, not soften it, crush it." The speaker wants the listener to expect overwhelming restitution. In fact, they note that the doors in life that previously stayed closed to you, they weren't final answers. They were merely held breaths, just waiting for the exact right hour ordered by the judge. All right, finally, Section 5, living out the verdict, walking out of the courtroom. Let's move to and see how this builds on everything we've talked about, because, it's one thing to win a court case. It's a whole other thing to figure out how to actually live your life afterward in the everyday world. So what does the physical and spiritual posture of a victorious person actually look like? Well, first, you must physically lift your head. The text points out that the enemy needs your head bowed under accusation to keep reading you those fake charges. If you lift your head, you can actually hear the verdict and see the open doors in front of you. Second, you gotta guard your heart against bitter people who just want to hand you a false gavel and pull you down into their own sickness. And third, you must use your newfound freedom to sow seeds of love and forgiveness into others who are still trapped in their own courtrooms.
Now, you might be wondering about a very practical human concern. What happens when I inevitably mess up tomorrow or, 10 minutes from now? Well, the speaker strongly emphasizes the unconditional nature of this metaphorical ruling. Even if you stumble, even if something totally contrary trips you up, the verdict does not flicker. The judge is there to comfort you, not to read you a brand new sentence. The source goes out of its way to ensure you understand that this message is built entirely on a foundation of eternal grace, not your temporary perfection.
To wrap up our explainer today, the source text leaves us with an ultimate decision to make. The metaphor has been fully mapped out for us. The judge has spoken, the accuser's case is empty, and a verdict of love has been permanently entered into the record. The case is closed. But here's the final provocative challenge derived straight from the text. Will you actually choose to walk out of the courtroom of accusation and refuse to go back in? It's a remarkably powerful framework for anyone looking to leave past guilt behind and step forward into a future of grace. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep learning.